Hi sweeties, how are you doing? Welcome to cimnanya. If this is your first time of coming across this channel, sweetheart, kindly smash that subscribe button and turn your notifications so you are notified each time I upload. And please give this video a thumb up. I appreciate you all so much, and I am saying a very big shout out to every one of you for all the love and support you all give me here. I am truly grateful. You are super awesome. Thank you so much. So today we'll be talking something very important, and it's about Black people actually calling out sundown towns, and a lot of people are also responding to it because people keep saying there is no more sundown town and the rest of it. But man, sincerely speaking, there is sundown town, and like in most states they have more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and all that. And some people do not even know because, like, I was going through the stitches, and some people were like asking what is sundown town and all that in the comment section. Please, sundown town is where, I mean, sun is not supposed to set on a Black person. If you are caught in sundown town, trust me, that is the end of you. You are not going to, like, it's just going to take the grace for you to make it alive and all that. I have seen so many stories of people sharing how they escaped sundown town and all that, and a lot of people, both white and Black, actually came all out to talk about sundown town and tell people that it still exists, and you have to really travel safe, know where you are going to at a particular point in time, maybe where you are passing through. Make sure there is no sundown town, and if there is, do not ever stop there for any reason, because this thing is real. And like, taking time to look at all this, and I am asking myself, why is sundown town still a thing in 2023? Like, why is it that some Black people cannot pass through a particular or a certain place because of sundown town and all that? And I think, I mean, this thing is so rich disease and so disgusting, because I don't know how something like this will still be existing in 20. Like, it's really hard for me to understand why there is still sundown town. You know what? I mean, these sundown towns are an excuse to lean and change somebody. This is how I say it. I am rolling this clip. We'll come back to talk about it. Let me know what you all think in the comment section. Straight up, I am rolling them.
It's no secret that sundown towns still exist in the United States. But something that I think needs to happen is we need to expose sundown towns in the states that we live in. And I'll be the first to start it off. So if you feel inclined to add on to this, then do so. So the sundown town that I'm going to start with is Anna, Illinois. And if you're from Illinois, then you probably heard of this place. See, the racists that lived in Anna, Illinois came up with a nice little catchphrase. And it was, ain't no around. And another reason why I decided to do this video was just to show the world that racism isn't a Southern thing. It's everywhere. It's in the North, it's in the West, it's in the East. But yeah, if you watch this and you decide that you want to add to this, please do, because I want to figure out how many sundown towns are still thriving today. It's no secret that sundown towns still exist in the United States.
Hi, my name's Imani, and I am a stand-up comedian based out of Oregon. I was basically raised here, and out of curiosity, I was like, let me see what sundown towns we have here. I already know about one of them. It's called Lake Oswego, and they literally call it Lake No Negro. But I was like, what else? I perform all over the state, and yeah, a lot of times I'm the only Black person I see while I'm there, but I want to know how racist it used to be, because currently most people, they don't say nothing to me at all, and it's fine. All I need to do when I go to that city is stand on stage and talk into a microphone for like 10-15 minutes and make them laugh and go. And luckily for me, it has been a successful journey so far. But I am curious, so I'm about to be right back after I look it up. I'm truly not surprised, and I will say that this list is longer than this because I took a screenshot of the first page and not the second. Oregon has a racist history. I mean, Black people weren't allowed to live here for a very long time, so it was literally made as a safe haven so white people could be away from Black people. But we here now, been here forever. At least I've been here for a while, so yeah, it's an interesting list to look at. Luckily, I have been to damn near every place on this list, and it's been chill. I mean, people look at me. I'm not invisible, so I figured they would. But no one's ever said anything crooked to me, which is great. I mean, Lake Oswego is definitely the racist place on this list because still to this day actively doing some crooked shit to people of color. But it's mostly the youth. If you just Google Lake Oswego High School, it just goes scrolling through all the racist shit that happens there. Thank God I didn't go there. Thank God. But yeah, most of these places, the only thing that you're going to experience is being the only one. Truthfully, you will be the only one when you're in those places, which sucks, but hey, Oregon is like 5% black, so what did you expect to happen?
Please do, because I want to figure out how many sundown towns are still thriving today.
So I went to the site where you can check all the sundown towns in America on a map. And I clicked on Georgia, and I can tell y'all that this list is very accurate. Especially Forsyth. Oh, absolutely yes. They didn't say it was possibly a sundown town. It might have been. No. They said surely. It's like no question. No question. It was for sure one of those places. Yeah. Like deadass, you can talk to anyone who's lived in Georgia since the 80s for real. And bring up Forsyth County. Boy, the stories that they have to tell about that place. Look. I'm saying, yeah.
We need to expose sundown towns in the states that we live in.
So whenever this conversation comes up about sundown towns, I always like to talk about Jasper, Texas. And first, I just want to talk about how there is still the existing Green Book that people can look at. The Green Book, created by Victor H. Green, has multiple volumes that you can still look up today. As somebody who's from the state of Texas, there are websites like this called 11 Sundown Towns in Texas you should be aware of. And while Vidor, Texas, Wadden, Texas are the only two that are listed as active sundown towns, I always talk about Jasper, Texas. Now, while the demographics of Jasper, the city itself, are quite split, the demographics of the county, as you can see here, are not, showing up at 73% white. And the reason why I discussed Jasper, Texas is because of the murder of James Byrd Jr. He was dragged by 3 white men by a truck down a road for 3 miles. And so I always think it's very strange that Jasper, Texas isn't included in this list when people talk about sundown towns. And maybe it's more diverse now, but I'll tell you one motherfucking thing. I would never step foot in a town that fucking dragged a fucking black man. That is one motherfucking thing I will never goddamn do. And I think maybe why this has resonated with me for so long is because it was 2 years before the day I was born, on the exact day I was born. So it's always been something that when I think about it, I don't know, it has like a strange feeling for me. And this is also like one of her stories my mother ever told me once I started driving, about reasons to not step foot in sundown towns and things like that. And on top of that, I think it's like really close to Louisiana, so people sometimes tend to stop there. If you are driving between Louisiana and Texas, do not stop in this town. Keep fucking going. And I hope Mr. Byrd continues to know the peace that he so rightfully deserved.
It's no secret that sundown towns still exist in the United States.
So this guy is absolutely correct. There are still sundown towns in the U.S. And I can't believe it's actually still a thing. But I did look into sundown towns in Michigan, and there are some. Let me show you. In Michigan, we have Dearborn, Melvindale, Ossawa, and Wyandotte. I'm going to basically go off of Dearborn because Dearborn is the one I'm most familiar with. And if you are from the Detroit area and you are black, you know we ain't wanted in Dearborn. Okay, it's mostly white and Middle Eastern. It's never been a place that people of us melanated skin have been welcome in. I always used to wonder why my mother had a problem going to Dearborn. Now I see. But check out one of their famous phrases that they used to say in Dearborn. The sun never set on a Negro in Dearborn. And that is why this Negro stays her ass out of Dearborn. But seriously, why are sundown towns a thing still? Like, let's get this shit off the books. Like, it is 2023. This should not be a thing anymore. And people do think that racism only happens a lot in the South. And trust me, it happens up here in the North too. Especially in places like Michigan. Okay?
It's no secret that sundown towns still exist in the United States.
I just woke up. But don't ever go to Rulo, Nebraska. I'm going to tell you like my mama told me. Make sure your gas is filled up somewhere else, okay? Don't stop. Don't eat. Don't do nothing in Rulo, Nebraska. The KKK be all up and through there. They be killing black people. Don't go to Rulo, R-U-L-O. I ain't got no map. R-U-L-O, Nebraska. Don't go.
And I'll be the first to start it off. So if you feel inclined to add on to this, then do so.
All right, well, some people will have you think that this might be a Southern thing. I assure you it is not. This is Maryland. These are the sundown towns of Maryland. Now, I recognize most of these, but going to college out in, say, about Garrett County, which is on the list, I can tell you, yes, absolutely, this exists. It was known where I went to school that, you know, if you were a person of color or minority and you went off the campus, you had to be a little careful. I remember seeing the first Klan member ever in person where I went to college. It was kind of nuts. So yeah, this still exists. And I mean, while they're kind of boony, they're still out there and they are still super duper racist.
It's no secret that sundown towns still exist in the United States.
I am 32 years old, lived in Texas basically my entire life, and I will not stop in Vidor, Texas or Orange, Texas. The stories I have heard from family members who grew up around there are terrifying. And if you ask anybody that lives in Texas that is a person of color, like, we all know it. It is an unwritten rule. You don't stop in Vidor. I know now there are black people that live there and, you know, they've made that their home, but I personally still do not feel safe. I think before I had mentioned I was going to be sent to Vidor for a job, and I literally told them, me and another person told them, we will not be going. You can just fire us. I'm not going there, because it was going to require us to stay the night there. Absolutely not.
We need to expose sundown towns in the states that we live in.
So I live in Utah, and according to the historical database of sundown towns, these are the sundown towns in Utah. We have Bingham, Blanding, Bluffdale, Brigham City, Carbon, Corinne, Eagle Mountain, General, Murray, Price, and Salt Lake City. Starting with Blanding. It looks like it was a possible sundown town in the past. And we don't know if it's still a sundown. So, next up we have Bluffdale. It was a possible sundown town in the past, and we don't know if it still is. Same with Brigham City, possible sundown town in the past, and we don't know if it still is. Now, Corinne, it was a probable sundown town in the past, and it probably still is. Alright, Eagle Mountain, it's a possible sundown town in the past. It's probably not, although there are still very few black people. Now, for General, there's no information, so I'm not sure what that is. Now, Murray, Utah, probable sundown town in the past, and we don't know if it still is. Now, Salt Lake City, it says it was always biracial, and it's surely not still a sundown town. Now, Price, it was surely a sundown town in the past. And it's probably not still a sundown town, although there are still very few black people. Now, that's surely not all of it. That's just what the website is saying. Travel safe.
Please do, because I want to figure out how many sundown towns are still thriving today.
Okay, so I didn't know of any sundown towns myself. So I went online and I found this website where it will literally, you can click on any state in the U.S. and it will give you a list of every sundown town in that state. I spent half of my life in North Carolina and half in Massachusetts, so those are the two that I checked. These are for North Carolina, and these ones are for Mass. It's called justice.togaloo.edu, History of Social Justice.
We need to expose sundown towns in the states that we live in. So I live in Utah, and I came across this article called "The Aftermath of Robert Marshall's 1925 Lynching Made Price a Sundown Town." Utah doesn't appear to have any laws on the books that said people of color couldn't live in town, but it's clear African Americans weren't welcomed in many places. Price, Utah was one of them. It was labeled a sundown town by the late sociologist and historian James Loewen and his book Sundown Towns, A Hidden Dimension of American Racism. These were communities where people of color were either prohibited by law or by custom from living within the city limits. Price held special interest to Loewen because of Robert Marshall's lynching in 1925, which may have been the last lynching in the West. Robert Marshall was an internment miner who allegedly shot a deputy sheriff. Census data from 1920 shows there were almost 200 black people living in Carbon County at the time. 10 years after Marshall's lynching, there were only 39 people. Kimberly Mangun is an associate professor of communication at the University of Utah. She contributed to Lynching Beyond Dixie, American Mob Violence Outside the South, and studied Marshall's death. Mangun said it is hard to historically correlate the two events, but the census data tells a story. Certainly the numbers are really evident with that drastic decline. People at the time said they did not feel safe. She said black Utahns did not feel safe after the lynching. She said that has to do with the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in Utah, according to Mangun. They first came to the state in June 1921 and went on to form an official chapter. She said they were at their peak right before Marshall's murder. Price was a difficult place because there were known Klansmen in town and in Carbon County, Mangun said. So again, it was that sort of underlying current of threat and intimidation that African Americans who lived in the area were well aware of. Years later, racial discrimination is still present. In 1998, Utah-based activist and civil rights leader Rev. France Davis needed an escort when he went to commemorate Marshall's grave in Price. When we got there, they attached the policemen to me because I had so many threats against my life, Davis said. Mangun said the mining town wasn't the only place where discrimination existed. It was felt all over the state. It may not have been outright racism, but it was exclusion through other means, she said. Economic disenfranchisement, housing and residential discrimination, where people were effectively excluded from buying and selling homes or mandated to live in certain areas of cities, including Salt Lake City's. Davis experienced the effects of racial discrimination and spent a good portion of his life fighting these kinds of policies. When he was teaching a fellow and graduate student at the University of Utah, well, apparently I can't read, but anyway, Davis said when he went to pick up the keys at his new apartment, the landlord told him he couldn't live there. He said that kind of treatment was common. Even now, many things remain the same for black people. The average African American family spends a great deal of time teaching their children about how to deal with authority figures and how to behave if pulled over by the police. Then, Davis said, it's common practice, it's a given, there's some things that are given and we accept it, and then we train to avoid any kind of conflict. In light of last year's protests against racial injustice, Mangun said much of this history is still present today. So yeah, that's Price, Utah. That's some background. I can't really find much.
We need to expose sundown towns in the states that we live.
Ooh, this is a good one. So I live in Indiana, and the most well-known sundown city here is Martinsville. Martinsville has a pretty heinous history with racism and is home to the Ku Klux Klan. Cringe, right? When you travel here, expect to see a Confederate or a MAGA flag. My advice, just don't go there. Even I don't go there.
Like, I don't want to go there. I live like an hour or something like that away. No desire. No desire to go there. Actually, I have been there one time. Then now that I thought about it. But I can promise you, you ain't missing much. Like, it's open fields. It's country as fuck. There ain't shit there.
We need to expose sundown towns in the states that we live in.
I 100% agree with this. More people should know the history of the places that they're living because it's not taught to us. It's not the way it should be. I live in Massachusetts, and a few years ago I read this book, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, A Forgotten History of How Our Government Segregated America. And this is a problem that continues today and has directly led to the cause of towns that did not have diversity, did not allow certain people there, and essentially promoted these attitudes of sundown town. Just 100 years ago, the Klan held meetings and cross burnings in small towns in eastern and central Massachusetts. 100 years ago, the Klan had rapidly spread in Maine, and they had 15,000 members showing up at their state convention that year. And these attitudes did not die out when desegregation started happening. A lot of people were angry about desegregation in schools and in property, so they started moving out of places like Boston into the suburbs, carrying that racial bias. Even in my history class, the history teacher had to give us a warning before we started watching videos about the desegregation movement because people might recognize their relatives. It had already happened the year before. And in the historical sundown towns of Massachusetts, these are the towns that are on here, some of which are the towns that I grew up around and have friends in still. This talks about how white flight from Boston during the civil rights era brought many white people to the suburbs, including Quincy, which is on that list, that had already established themselves as hostile to black people through the restrictive mortgage and lending practice known as redlining. This is also what's talked about in The Color of Law. And this didn't stop back then, it still continues today with racial inequality in Quincy's housing. In Massachusetts in general, home buying trends are showing that there's new locations of racial segregation. And in this recent study, it found that 81% of all U.S. metros over 200,000 residents were more segregated in 2019 than in 1990. In Massachusetts, most black homebuyers are concentrated in a small number of areas. And while Boston's trying to introduce rent control, a study report found that though black and brown residents make up a quarter of the population in the cities, only 12% of them are in rent-controlled units. It also highlighted that a Stanford study found that rent control accelerates gentrification by encouraging landlords to convert into luxury rentals. So yeah, it's really important to learn history because the past issues can still be current.
I think needs to happen is we need to expose sundown towns.
I have 3 for this list. Orient, Circleville, and Benton County, Ohio. Those are cities that I grew up in.
I think needs to happen is we need to expose sundown towns.
I have property in this little town right here. This is law now. Benefit. This thing's huge.
So this is all I got from this video, and I won't lie to you, it's just really unfortunate that things like this still exist to this very moment. And the fact that you can even find them online, like, you know, where there are sundown towns, it's horrifying. Number one is that, like, you know, why would something like this still exist in 2023? You know, I remember speaking or talking with my friends about it, and they were like, yo, there is no more sundown towns and all that. And I put up videos of where people talked about their experiences, how they were almost like gone, probably because then they were probably saved by just somebody and all of that. I mean, it was just a horrifying videos and experiences like people had shared. And I think also calling out all these people, telling people about these places, because this is more like it. The boy was like let's expose it, because some people did not know. Some of the videos and the stitches I watched, I heard people saying, what does sundown town mean? It means some of them do not even know that it exists, but so many of them also know that it exists. All right. And also some black people might be traveling towards there or traveling around there or like probably passing through without knowing this place is a sundown town, only for them to end up not being found ever again. Why? Because they were in sundown town without knowing. Even though there was a story that I watched, the man did not know it was a sundown town and he came out to buy petrol, right? And everybody was just like, cars were stopping by, like straight up. Cars straight up, when they saw him, were stopping by. Everybody were looking at him. Not until one man approached him and was like, what are you doing here? Get in your car and let my family pump your gas. The man got into the car, they pumped his gas, and they told him, you are gonna drive to I mean, the whole story was just like horrifying, because him driving with the man, he doesn't even know the man, and he drove with him to the house and ended up staying there overnight, and the next day he left. So, you know, I am happy for him that the man that also took him was a good person. What if it was not a good person? I mean, what happens in sundown town would have also happened to him. And the fact that this is still going on to this very moment and they are not doing anything about it, it's all over the internet that there are places that are sundown town where black people, like, you know, the sun never sets on a black person. They're like, you are all gone. It's just a terrible thing. And I think it is time, I mean, they erase and, like, you know, I mean, abolish all this, because I mean, this is just so disgusting. Like, how do people not, I just don't get it, man. The whole thing is just crazy and, like, you know, so absurd. Like, somebody cannot, because I am a black person, for that reason, maybe I am passing through a town and like it was dark and I am like, I would just be so scared for my life and all that. And you also heard what a black woman said, that she was sent to a place for a job and they were supposed to stay there overnight. They said, no, it's either you sack us or we don't want to go, because we don't want to die. So it means it is real, it is happening. And also, this is more like me telling you also, like, you know, all these things are for educational purposes, so you all will be very much aware of where you are going to and the rest of it. So if you have somewhere you are driving through or something, make sure that you are not going to sundown town without even knowing, and then end up maybe being dead and the rest of it. This is where I am going to draw the curtain. Thank you so much for the support, and see you all in my next video. Bye for now.